John Wang. I want to again thank you, all the guests here, and we are really proud IDEA is having Signagelive here with us. So after Dita, I think I'll hand the session to you.
Thank you for having me. So the first area that we are going to be covering today is obviously the good question and something which isn't easily answered of what is the role of content management system platform and of course the media players such as IDEA in making scalable digital signage deployments a reality. Now, a brief overview really of how digital signage has come along since its infancy, because it is important to kind of cast an eye over that, purely because back in the day, and I'm sure that John will agree with me, it was very much about hanging screens on a wall and getting, well, forgetting about anything else really, which included content and connectivity and everything else. Times have, of course, changed, and it's no longer just about hanging and banging and forgetting about it. True scalability, if we think about it, can only be achieved and happen when all of the pieces of the digital signage jigsaw puzzle, as I like to call it, are taken care of. And two parts of that jigsaw puzzle right now are being presented on the line. So that is the CMS and the media players.
Yes, Afrodita, so I could 100% agree with you. So as we progress in this digital signage market, we're definitely seeing larger and larger projects. Like we're going to talk about a few today, collaboration between Signagelive and IDEA that are in thousands of units. And here I completely agree with you that the scalability of the software and the media player is of critical importance here.
Excellent. So if we move on, one of the things that I always say to people is don't settle for less. And there are certain areas to bear in mind for yourself and, of course, your customers as to what it is that you should be looking for. So unsupported devices and, of course, CMS platforms shouldn't be something that you get used to or you accept, and neither should your customers. The same thing for unmanaged devices and, of course, consumer grade or low cost. And more importantly, low cost doesn't necessarily mean cost effective, and John will tell you more about that.
Exactly. So we constantly see people are still talking about using low-cost TV sticks, TV dongles, you know, for large-scale rollouts, and we just think this is really not thinking the whole picture in the deployment. So people do talk about tend to talk about total cost of ownership rather than just the upfront hardware or software cost, especially when you factor in all the support issues in the back end, or the potential bugs in an immature CMS platform, and the environmental conditions that can cause a low cost or consumer grade media player to fail. Really, all these are going to add up down the road if you don't pick the right technologies to start.
But more importantly, we're talking about scalable solutions, and USB sticks don't always mean scalable. Regardless of which country in the world you are, there will always be some additional labor cost, even if you are sending somebody in a van in every single city or branch that you might have digital signage in. The whole point of scalability is to try and take some of that headache away, or well, all of it away, which is what we discuss about, and more specifically broken down into the CMS platform, and what you should expect and in turn your customers expect of you or of a CMS platform. I keep going on with the theme of not settling for less. And the idea behind this is, if we start off with cloud, Signagelive has always been a cloud infrastructure organization, and there's a reason for that. It gives you, of course, as I've mentioned here, infrastructure savings. It takes away any of the headaches from a management perspective. Why would you want to go through the pain, for example, of hiring your own engineers to look after servers in God knows how many locations, when it's what Amazon do, or Amazon Web Services does, on a 24/7 basis for global customers far larger than Signagelive or IDEA will ever be. So that's one headache to take it away. The flexibility of our platform gives people or our customers the ability to be able to either centrally or locally manage all of their devices from 1 to 1,000 from anywhere in the world. And you can, of course, continue to manage the schedule, the reporting, and of course the interactivity of all of those devices. One of the features that we have, which is of use to, and actually in comparison to other CMS providers out there, is we don't limit the number of users that we have on a network. You can have 1 or 100 or 1,000. For us, it's important that whoever needs to be on that network to make changes, regardless of what their privileges are, then should not have any restrictions to be able to jump on there. And as I've mentioned earlier, the user levels or different privileges are part of the software features. A lot of the free support that we talk about is actually one of the biggest unique selling points, certainly from our perspective and what our customers tell us, because it is very important that when you are looking at making something truly scalable for a number of different locations, that you know that somebody has your back. If something goes wrong, or if you do have a question regarding the CMS, who is it that you would currently go to if it's not Signagelive that you're using, for example? And I'm sure that anyone on this call at some point or another in their time of doing digital signage deployments will have had to have gone through a headache of chasing their tail to try and get on, in touch with the right person who can actually support them. Alongside that, we always provide the free updates. And it's important for us actually that anything that we talk about Signagelive from a cost perspective includes the support and includes the updates, regardless of when they happen or how often. I touched upon this briefly earlier actually, the idea about who will be around after 3 years. When you're making a true investment in digital signage, it is important to understand the pedigree of the company. And I mention this now because cloud digital signage especially is very low barriers to entry, so there will always be new customers or new companies that will be launching their own product, but not necessarily be around in 6 months or even a year or even later, further down the line. Signagelive has been around since 1997, IAdea since 2000.
Yes.
John? Okay.
Just slightly younger than you.
So, neither of us are going anywhere anytime soon, and the reason why we're still here is because of all of the above that I've been talking about, the updates, the support and understanding our customers, and really delivering what it is that we see is going to move us in the right direction. And part of that is my last bullet point, which covers the do you want to do it your way? A bit like DIY CMS, for want of a better word. What I mean by that is something that we've been doing in the last few, maybe 1.5, 2 years, which is talking about API-first developments and how Signagelive is actually built, and making those APIs available to customers. So that could be anything from building your own UI on top of Signagelive, and this is where my first analogy starts. Think of Signagelive as the engine under the bonnet, and your API with the EUI being the color of that bonnet, or maybe it's either a Porsche or a Ferrari. My non-technical way of explaining it. And the widget development framework takes care of one of the new additions that we've had since the back end of last year, actually, to do with widgets which are available to play offline and available to be downloaded from the Signagelive marketplace.
Yeah.
And in the next slide, you'll actually see, really, everything that I've been talking about embodied into one slide. Okay. So this particular slide that you see here is actually, as I mentioned earlier, I guess a true embodiment of what I've been talking about on the previous slide, which talks about the updates that we are constantly making. As of last week, the calendar widget was released to all of our customers, new and existing, free of charge, downloadable from our marketplace, and it works perfectly with the IAdea 10-inch devices, of course.
Yes.
More importantly, this is, of course, not the only update, but it's the most recent one, and there will be more coming, so keep your eyes peeled as of Monday, well, actually, probably today as well. Is it? No, today's Tuesday. No, Wednesday, so there will be some more today. Can't keep track of time.
Too busy.
Okay.
All right.
So, if we move on to the next slide.
Okay. So Thank you, IAdea. I totally agree with all those points are what we suggest the audience to look for in a mature, scalable software platform, CMS. And that's exactly the reason why we choose to partner with Signagelive and offer all those qualities in the product. And next, I would like to talk about on the player side some of the key points that we think should be watched for. IDEA and actually Signagelive, we've always been pushing for non-PC or post-PC based media players. So these are non-Wingtail platforms. We're not saying you shouldn't use that platform, but we're seeing a lot of misuse of that platform, especially taking a on lockdown consumer-grade operating system to run a professional managed digital signage network. We just think better technology should be available to drive a larger, more professional network, and I think IDEA offers that on the media player side. It has to be designed to work 24/7. Not selling for anything less, because your network is going to be out there 24/7. Power consumption is of critical importance, not only in the cost savings that will come with a lower power consuming media player, but also in the heat that will be let out of the platform, which will, if too much heat is generated during the playback, then you're going to need a fan. And most of you who have been deploying any digital signage would know that the fan is one of the weakest points in the digital signage hardware that can cause a failure in the field that will require extensive cost to repair and recover. And next thing is what we still see a lot of people doing. They're using a consumer-grade TV stick or a media player platform that's really just built on a more on a TV stick that's wrapped in a metal enclosure, which is provided by some of the vendors out there. And we suggest that you look at a non-proprietary platform. For example, one that's supported by APIs like Signagelive, along with a media player that's really more flexible and can be upgraded, not locked down by a single vendor. So IDEA do support an upgradable platform, and the firmware updates can be supplied, provided through Signagelive. You should also looking for a media player roadmap that includes not just the media playback solution, but more features that you're going to need down the road as you expand your network. For example, an HDMI input feature that allows you to pull in a live TV feed and perhaps have a text scroll across that TV feed. That is available with IDEA products. The ability to build video walls, which are very popular these days, because digital signage is all about attracting eyeballs, and single screen can only be so large. When you need a larger presence, you need multiple screens, and IDEA players allow you to build video walls using multiple media players synchronized. The ability to allow you to literally just look at what is playing at the far edge of your network using remote screen capture. This is a feature that will be soon coming to the Signagelive and IDEA integration platform. The technology is already available in the IDEA device, so if you purchase today, very soon you'll get that feature available through Signagelive. And as we said, remote firmware updates that will be distributed to improve system security and reliability. Why operating temperature? Don't pick a media player hardware that's only designed to work within a air-conditioned room. You're gonna have restaurants that have air conditioning shut down at night, and you want to make sure your media player are still able to continue to play the next morning. It should be robust. The construction of the hardware should be robust against shock and vibration. So in case you're installing a project in a bus or on a train, like many IDEA devices are installed, you don't need to go to another hardware source just to have a device that works for those environments.
It's a good.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Good point, actually, John. When you were talking about the wide operating temperature, I was in a meeting yesterday. I went to a school down the road from where I live, and they had particular rack servers, very messy, mind you, but they were in an air-conditioned room, and even so, they had to reboot the PC devices once a week at least, because they were literally just left on the floor by whoever had done the initial installation, and they were overheating. So they weren't even on a shelf. So, but it is important when we mentioned, even though it was an air-conditioned room.
Yeah, yeah, and we just hear stories like devices start to fail like the day after installation because the environment during the installation time is always controlled, and the moment you walk out and the store shuts down, temperature goes up and the device can break down. So we definitely advise you to look for something that's more tolerant on the environmental conditions. Last but not least is really the ability for the device to be designed to work over extended period of time. And the manufacturer will be willing to provide that assurance over extended period of time. And IAdea does that. We do offer extended warranty, and in fact, we have many devices that have been running the field, after 5 or 7 years in operation. So that's really how IAdea builds its name. So I'll move on to the next, and Aphrodita, hand it to you.
Yep. Well, obviously, we haven't joined this session just because we haven't got anything else to do for the day, because we are all very people. So the important question is, why does it matter? And we talked about this from the beginning. And the reason why it matters is because customer expectations over the course of time are changing. There's no doubt about it. It is happening. If you haven't experienced it so far, you will start to, believe me. And really, they expect more from their partners. And by partners, I mean their systems integrators who effectively manage everything from one angle. So as I've said here, is one company to manage everything and, of course, remove their headaches along with it. It is important that obviously that company has their interests in mind, whether that is from a deployment perspective or whether it's from a support perspective. And that is what customers are looking for. We get between 50 to 100 leads coming through to us, or inquiries, I should say, a day, globally, of course. And half of the time, the end users are far more educated now than they ever were, say, for example, 10 years ago. They know what it is that they want, and they know what their expectations are. So use the right tools to hand to be able to deliver that kind of message to them. And as John mentioned earlier, it is very important thinking of the long-term future, not just the cost saving of the initial outlay. Yes, USB sticks are more cost-effective when you think of the upfront cost, but the whole point of wanting to do digital signage properly, and if the company is serious about the digital signage, they will want to be serious about managed scalable deployments. And again, just because you're not settling for less, don't allow them to settle for less either, because it is important to look at the whole long-term picture.
Totally agree.
Okay. So a couple of case studies here, and John and I will both be talking. Starting off with GameStop. Gosh, this is actually one of the projects that I first got involved in as I started with Signagelive, coming up to 3 years ago now. Yeah. And it's one of those projects which, when we first originally had the conversation, it was one of those where you kind of stop and think to yourself, is this actually going to happen because of the scalability? And believe it or not, yes, it has, because the systems integrator, whom we worked with, covered everything for that one customer, being GameStop. It wasn't just about hanging those screens, as you can see them there in the shop locations. It was about giving them the content that they needed. They were already providing that content to that customer, and this was a form, or digital signage gave them a different avenue to be able to reach out to those customers, and of course make them loyal GameStop customers as opposed to anything else.
Yes, so I think, yeah, IAdea had a great time collaborating with Signagelive on this project from the very initial, I remember the discussion phase, to pilots and then the full rollout. And really what we're, I think, witnessing here is the scalability of both the CMS platform and the devices. So it's using a combination of the IAdea MBR 1100. These are the smaller media players, along with the XMP 7300, which are capable of.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, John. Probably the MBR 1100 is the perfect example of cost-effective but not low cost.
Yes.
In terms of the range of other devices that IAdea caters for.
Exactly, and I think it's great that we both were able to effectively through a case through the pilot study to convince the customer to go not go for the lowest cost, but go for something that's just reasonably cost effective but really scalable. So not only we offer the 1100, which is more on the lower end, but also the 7300, which is much higher performance, and we use that in collaboration with a company called Stream TV. We both Signagelive and IAdea put in effort to enable this network to also display glass-free 3D content. So that is a quite an achievement. This is the first CMS and media player platform that is able to deliver glass-free 3D on Stream TV screens. And the result of this project over almost nearly 3 years is today we're running at more than 3,000 locations in over 6 countries. And I think this is a very impressive project, and I think it's just the perfect proof that the combination of Signagelive and IAdea is really designed to scale.
Mm. No, I agree. And thinking back in terms of the number of given our free support, I'm just trying to think of how often that systems integrators got in touch with us, and it really isn't that many times.
Right. Right.
We have plenty of customers who will come on live chat for the slightest thing, which is one of the reasons why it's there. But they are very much self-sufficient, and they truly understand not just the software but also the hardware, they understand the importance of knowing, having that knowledge for themselves so that they can better serve that customer.
Yes. So let me take us to the next project. This is a deployment with the Dermalogica chain. I think, IAdea, you're personally involved in this project from the very beginning.
Yeah, but it just so happens that both of them I was.
Yeah.
But yes, I remember having the first meeting with them. And again, if you remember what I said earlier about this was actually an inquiry that came into Signagelive. But remember what I said about end users being much more educated in terms of what it is that they want and knowing what it is of how to get there, which is great actually, because not very often do we have this kind of end user where they know exactly what it is that they want to achieve. So we had the conversation with Dermalogica about bringing digital signage to enable better customer experience in their stores. And Lift and Learn was a perfect example of that, without necessarily, first of all, breaking the bank, and B, not having to be Einstein to be able to figure out how actually to make it work, because it is a very simple feature within Signagelive and IAdea, and the way that it's all set up.
Right. And I think in a retail store today, facing all the challenges from online, I think it's absolutely critical for the store to deliver a high level of personal touch and interactive experience within the store. So I think that's where the Live and Learn feature really helped this store move to the next level and be able to effectively compete against an online price-sensitive vendor. So here we're seeing on the right-hand side a photo of a Live and Learn demo where sensors are installed. So as soon as the product is picked up, the video switches to a relevant content and it tells customers about the exact product that is being picked up. So all this feature is integrated, as IAdea said, into Signagelive and IAdea devices as pretty much a standard offering. So it is projects like these that allow us to see, digital signage is really moving the physical retail store to a whole new level with this kind of interactivity.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Go on. To you again, IAdea.
Thank you. So we talked about, basically achieving all of these different things and how they're done, and they all look great. But more importantly, how it is that the people who are listening in on this webinar can actually achieve part of that success. And really, the easiest way of thinking about it, yes, there are other areas that we need to think about, but Signagelive and IAdea will give you a complete solution. And if you think back on the most successful systems integrators, and I'm sure that John will agree with me from their perspective, whether it's Signagelive customer or not, the one thing which is, or the many things which are apparent in all of them, is that they wrap in optional services for their company or for their end users. And they provide other things rather than just the hardware and the software, which might sometimes include content design and creation. Sedamo for GameStop is a prime example of this. This is how they started their relationship with GameStop and it evolved into digital signage. Another area is, of course, content management. As I've said earlier, they manage everything on that network for them, so the end user does not have to worry about any of the content. They just provide what content is needed. They can, of course, have access to those networks, and by the way, they do in local user fashion. Network management, of course, again, from a Signagelive perspective, I talked about. The other thing is connectivity, which so many people think at the very last minute about. Now, obviously, we're a cloud company. We don't need permanent internet connectivity to be able to get the content or to have content showing on your screens, but it is important that when you are doing frequent updates that you have the right connectivity at that various locations and sites. And of course the installation side of things, site surveys, or actually just taking care of how everything will look from brackets all the way through to where the wires will be, etc. More importantly, the support. Whilst we have the live support, which is available for all of our customers, our integrators that we work with the most closely do also act as first-line support for their end users. And anything that then needs to be escalated to Signagelive, they do so. So a couple of other areas to think about as to how you can apply various different parts of IAdea and Signagelive put together is IAdea comes in all guises and works with, for example, Signagelive as well. You may have heard of them as Planar or ViewSonic. They are all supported models in the media player side of things. NMP30W, I believe, is the ViewSonic version of the MBR 1100, right. And that's one I remember. Well, actually, I remember the Planar one as well, which is MP70 is for the 1700 XMP, which is the 4K device. But again, it's easy to manage, of course, from one all the way through to more than 1,000 devices. Scale as you need it to. You don't have to bite off more than you can chew. You can start off small and grow big, all through the cloud-based platform, which will be available to you. I keep on going on about this, but it is important. Free support and updates. Any of the updates which we are constantly releasing, and it's more than probably definitely more than 3 times a year. Not naming any other platforms out there, but for the lifetime of the license, everything is included when you purchase. User privileges, it's important that obviously you can allow or decide what each user can and can't have access to. Intuitive UI, we have been making changes since 1997, so we don't look like a UI which hasn't changed. So I'm sure that the people who have already used it already will attest to this. And it's supported in 14 languages. So whether you're in Brazil and you want Portuguese, or whether you're in Spain and Spanish, and for example, GameStop, they have different languages in as their own users, including Italian and French, among others. And the areas in terms of the different industry verticals, which this is all applicable to, is anywhere from retail through to internal communications, healthcare, and automotive. There's plenty of information on. Quite, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This is actually an example of exactly what I have been talking. So if you think about the corporate communications or internal comms, these are pictures of our own UK boardroom area, or certainly the lower sitting room area, where you can see here on the right-hand side we've got a couple of screens. Live TV in the corner here, you can actually see it better in that area. Wrapped around our own little messaging and social media interaction through on the second screen. Another picture from our UK offices is our coffee area, because we've set it up into zones, and you can see here, of course, the particular Nespressos that you might want to have. We do also have the coffee machine, which is always good. And it's free coffee for whoever comes to the offices. But there are plenty of ways of obviously looking at how it is that we can work with you guys, either from a widget perspective, and those of you who have already jumped onto the network and looked in the marketplace for the QSR widgets will already see a lot of these are looking quite familiar.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the devices, the trusted devices that are available from IAdea. Some of you might already know it, but I think some of you are new to IAdea. I think this will be a good opportunity for me to give you a brief. So we do provide the MBR 1100, which is a small form factor, a lower cost device that's really designed for a well-controlled environment, like a store where you don't expect the environment temperature to change much. It provides HDMI output, 1080p, Full HD, supports H.264, the video format, and HTML5, which is pretty much becoming a de facto standard for the interactive digital signage content these days. Supports Wi-Fi and wired Ethernet. You can attach a touch screen through the USB interface, and supports the normal room temperature. On top of that, we have the more recommended version, the XMP6250, which is really the mainstream, the solid-state device. If the customer does have a little bit extra budget, we do recommend you to go with this, because this just gives you much less headache. Pretty much it provides the same functionality as the MBR 1100 with the added temperature range support. So if the store shuts down its air conditioning at night, you will have nothing to worry about the next morning having the system back up and playing content without any surprises. And if you're looking for a little bit additional feature, for example, the live video input capability, as we mentioned before, that will be perfect for sports bars and waiting area where you want to integrate a live TV feed into your digital signage. Then you can be looking at the XMP6400, which supports wider temperature range and the HDMI input feature. If you really want to go on top of the line and want higher performance on your web content, you'll be looking at the XMP7300, which we also supply an OPS version, which is the Intel standard for TV inserts, featuring 4K capability, HDMI 2.0 certified, 4K at 60 playback capability. So including supporting the 4K codec format, H.264, or also known as the HEVC format. Also wider temperature range support on this device. Last but not least is the 10-inch signboard, which you saw used in many places in the Dermalogica case study. This is a 10-inch sort of ruggedized tablet device with light bars on the side, especially designed for conference rooms. It can also be used in retail, where the light bar support it can be turned on and off and switched into different colors to indicate, it could be the thematic content design, or it could be to indicate the availability of the conference room as the schedule change and as the people move in and out of the room. So, and that device includes touch capability built into the screen, and it is a beautiful 10-inch wide view angle display that is just designed for up close viewing. So these are the devices that we're very proud to provide, and as IAdea said, they can be available in different disguises from different vendors, but you can always trust them for the reliability and the scalability that come with these IAdea devices. Okay, so I think today, well, IAdea, I certainly have fun sharing this session with you. I hope the audience felt the same. I think I'm proud to work with Signagelive, us delivering a scalable platform that has a very user-friendly and expandable CMS running on top. So I want to thank IAdea again for joining us. Do you want to, anything you want to share with the audience?
Well, thank you for having me. Of course, if anyone needs to have further discussions, whether they are existing users of both Signagelive and IAdea or new and they've heard this for the first time I'm sure that a recording will be available later, but there are, of course, ways that you can get in touch with us for further discussions. This specifically was a session which we did for the APAC territories. We are a global company, same as with IAdea, so there will be similar sessions running for the US and old EMEA. So stay tuned.
Yes. So if you have any questions, you can raise them now. We're not seeing questions at this moment. I think we'll wrap this up, and we will send now a link to all the attendees if you want the recording of the session. And of course, feel free to send us questions after the event. And thank you all for coming.
Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you, IAdea. Okay, goodbye now.